Hello, this is chapter 3. No, it's not. This is chapter 10, section 3. We are going to look at quadratic equations. Tonight I'm introducing the quadratic formula. We're going to write quadratic equations in standard form. We're going to identify the coefficients of quadratic equations in standard form. And we are going to solve quadratic equations by using the quadratic formula. So if you are talking about the quadratic equation, the general quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. C is always the constant. A is always the number being multiplied by x squared, and b is always the number multiplied by the variable x. So this is the quadratic equation. If you Google songs to remember the quadratic equation, there's like 500 of them. The one I learned that I know it sounds corny, but if I can sing it, if I just start singing it, I'll always remember what the quadratic equation is. The one I always sing in my head is negative b, plus or minus the square root of, plus or minus the square root of, b squared minus 4ac, b squared minus 4ac, all over 2a, all over 2a. And guys, you know what? You don't even have to send me a check for singing. That was free of charge. Free of charge. You are welcome. All right, so basically when we have a quadratic equation like you see on the screen, letter A, and you can't figure out how to factor it the way, you know, we're multiplying two numbers to get 18, but we add them to get 11. You know, if it's a problem like this and you can't think of two numbers that multiply to give you -2 or -4 but add to give you 1, then the quadratic equation is a way that will always solve a quadratic equation. It works every single time, even the simple ones, quadratic equation. So the first thing we have to do is identify the letters A, B, and C. All right, so A is always the number being multiplied by x squared, so our A is 2. B is always the number being multiplied by x to the first power, which is in this case 1. And then C is always your constant, and in this case it's -2. So when you have the quadratic equation, you just plug these numbers in exactly the way it tells you to. So negative b always means the opposite of b. Well, since b is a +1, then the opposite of +1 is -1. Almost forgot my 1. All right, we're always going to take the positive and negative square root of, so b squared, so since b is 1, we're going to square 1, minus 4ac, so 4 minus a, well, a is 2. Did I say 4 minus? -4 times a times b. -4 times 2, and c is -2. So c is -2, and I always have to extend that. I never make it long enough. And then it says all over 2a, because a lot of people will stop and they'll think, okay, it's only over, 2a is only under this part, but it's over the whole thing. The whole thing gets put over 2 times a, and once again, a, is the number 2. Okay, so I just plugged in for all of these variables, I plugged it right into the equation. Now, this is when you will definitely want to use your calculator. And the way I suggest to plug it in your calculator is I plug in just this part first, just what's under the radical first. I want to know what is that long number. So I'm going to type it in exactly like I see it. 1 squared, even though I know that's 1, I just get in the habit of just typing it all in. -4 in parentheses, 2 in parentheses, -2. So that is going to look like, I don't know if you can see that, but I'm not messing with that radical sign yet. I just want to know what b squared minus 4 times a times c is. So when I hit equals, I got, what does it say? 17. So right here, where am I? Right here. So all of this under the radical is 17. So I'm going to write -1 plus and minus the square root of 17 over 2 times 2 is 4. Now, when you put these into Hawks, I've already told you that Hawks doesn't have this plus minus sign. So you have to literally type this as 2 different numbers, 2 different answers. So the first answer is going to be -1 plus square root 17 over 4. That's the first answer. The second answer is -1 minus square root 17 over 4. And those are our 2 answers. Okay, so that's the first one. All right, we're moving on. All right, so letter B. Now you always want quadratics to equal 0. So, and you always, I mean, you don't have to, but I always try to make x squared equal the coefficient to be positive. I mean, it doesn't really matter when you're using quadratic formula, but in order to make this -3 positive, I'm going to move it on this side of the equal sign. And instead of moving both of these to this side, if I just move my -3x squared to the right side, it'll still equal 0, right? So if I add 3x squared, I'd end up with positive 3x squared minus 5x plus 1, and I'm just going to throw my 0 on this side. All right, so let's identify our A, B, and C. So our A is now it's positive 3x because we moved it to the other side of the equal sign, right? So positive 3. Our letter B, these didn't change signs because they stayed where they were. Our B is -5, and our letter C is 1. Now the quadratic formula, you guys, you're going to have to memorize it on the test. When you get the test, it's not going to be printed on the test. So you're going to have to know the quadratic formula. So you can sing your little song, -b, plus or minus the square root of, plus or minus the square root of, b squared minus 4ac, b squared minus 4ac, all over 2a, all over 2a. You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm here every night. All right, anyway, so now we have our quadratic formula. If you can read it, my handwriting is awful. All right, so let's start with the opposite of b, or negative b. The opposite of -5 is +5, plus or minus the square root of b squared. Now, you know, you can put this in parentheses and put -5 squared, but in my mind, I know whatever b is, when I square it, it's going to be a positive number. I just know that. So sometimes I go ahead and square it in my head and put 25 here, or, you know, just so no one's confused, let's just put b like it is, and we're going to square it. Of course, that's going to be positive 25, right? So b squared minus 4 times a times c, and all of that over 2 times a, whoops, 2 times a, which is 3. Okay, so I'm going to take my oh, Dookie. Huh, look at that. All right, so I'm taking my calculator. I'm plugging in everything under this radical. Everything in this radical I'm doing first. So in my calculator, I'm squaring 5 squared, or -5 squared. So 5 squared minus 4 times 3 in parentheses times 1 in parentheses. So I just plugged it straight into my calculator, and I see that all of that is equal to 13. So -5 squared minus 4 times 3 times 1 is 13. So I'm going to go ahead and write it as 2 answers. So my first answer is 5 plus square root of 13 over 2 times 3 is 6. My second answer is 5 minus square root 13 over 6. Those are my 2 answers. All righty. See, when you have the formula, these aren't difficult. You just plug them right into the formula and use your calculator. All right, now on this one, we have an x squared and we have a constant. So we know that a is the number being multiplied by x squared. So our a is 2, and our constant's always letter c. So our constant is negative 25. So what is letter b? So b is the number multiplied by x. So since we don't have an x, what times x would equal 0? Well, of course, the answer is 0. So if you don't have a letter B or a letter C, one of those two letters is going to equal 0. And in this case, it's B, because 0 times x is just 0. And so it's okay if you drop that. You don't write plus 0, right? All right, so what's our formula? It's negative B plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So the opposite of 0 is 0. So 0 plus or minus 0 squared minus 4 times 2 times c, which is negative 25, all over 2 times a. So in my calculator, I am typing 0 squared, which is 0. So 0 minus 4 in parentheses, 2 in parentheses, negative 25. Uh-oh. Negative 25 in the parentheses, and my answer is 200. Now, when I know I have a number that has a factor that's a perfect square, then I can go ahead and type the square root of 200, because I know, isn't 100 times 2, 200? So 100 is a perfect square. So I know the answer is 10 square roots of 2. But let's say I forgot that. So I'm going to hit second. I'm going to hit my x squared button. I'm going to type in 200. And my calculator tells me the answer is 10 square roots of 2. 10 square roots of 2. Okay? So I don't have to write 0 plus or minus 10 square roots of 2. But I know that one of my answers is positive 10 square roots of 2 over 4. And the other one would be the opposite of, or negative 10 square roots of 2 over 4. All right, now you don't ever simplify, you can't ever simplify your radicand, but you can always simplify your coefficients as long as everything can be divided by the same number. So what can we divide 10 and 4 by? We can divide both of them by 2. So this becomes 5 square roots of 2 over 2. And this becomes negative 5 square roots of 2 over 2. So those 2's definitely don't cancel. Those are not the same type of number, right? That's not really a 2, it's a square root of 2. So, make sure you would type that in HOX correctly. And that's it. Those are your 2 answers. Okie dokie. All right. All right, so here are 2 problems that you can practice. So I suggest that you pause this video. I want you guys to try to figure these out by yourself, and then I want you to come back and watch the video and make sure you got the right answer. So our A in the first one is negative 3. Our B is negative 5. And what is C? Well, we wanted to add 3 to this right side and set this thing equal to 0, right? So our C is actually positive 3. All right, let's go ahead. We'll do the second one. We'll identify A. We'll identify B. And we'll identify C. Guys, don't drop those negative signs. The C is not 2, it's negative 2. B is not 7, it's negative 7. Okay, so hopefully you all started with your quadratic formula. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So the opposite of b would be positive 5 plus or minus 5 squared or negative 5 squared. If you don't put that in your calculator with a parentheses around it, you're going to get the wrong answer. Minus 4 times negative 3 times positive 3 all over 2 times negative 3. So in my calculator, I'm doing 5 squared minus 4 times negative 3 times positive 3, and I got 61. So then I want to know, what is the square root of 61? And it doesn't simplify. So I have 5 plus square root 61 over negative 6, and 5 minus square root 61 over negative 6. Dookie. Can I undo what I just did? Oh, no. All right, I don't know. Oh, I got it back. Look at that. Okay, so what about the next one? So we're going to do the opposite of negative 7. So 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 2 all over 2 times 3. So I'm getting my calculator. I'm doing 49 minus 4 times 3 times negative 2, and I get 73. 73 cannot be simplified. So one answer is negative 7 plus square root 73 over 6, and negative 7 minus square root 73 over 6. Both of those. Hey, I just erased it. And can I do back? No, I can't do back. That's okay. Hopefully you saw that before I erased it. All right, I hope you guys got those right. Now, you know how I've been telling you to just do what's under the radical first? Well, that happens to be called the discriminant. The discriminant. So basically, sometimes you'll get 2 answers on every problem we've done so far. We've gotten 2 solutions. Well, there's some problems where there's only 1 solution. Like, for example, if you had x plus 4 squared, well, the only 1 answer would be negative 4. So that's only 1 answer. You wouldn't have to write it twice. So basically, if you put in what's under the radical in your calculator and it equals 0, that means there's only 1 solution for that problem. However, on every single problem we've done so far, every time we put the discriminant in our calculator, we've got a number bigger than 0, a positive number. Well, that means there are 2 real solutions. And that so far, every problem we've done, we've gotten 2 real solutions. But sometimes when you put the discriminant in your calculator, you're going to get a negative number, a number less than 0. And that means that quadratic equation has no real solutions. It's going to be an imaginary number, and we're not dealing with imaginary numbers in this course. And so you're going to write, if you put the discriminant in, which is this part that's only under the radical, when you put that in your calculator, if it gives you a negative number, then you can stop. You don't have to do anything else except you will write it's a non-real number. Okay. It says discussion of negative discriminants are given in later courses in algebra. Okay, so we're going to look at when we would get answers like that. So I've basically told you on these what kind of answers we should get. All right, so the discriminant, so we're talking about only the part under the radical. So the discriminant is square root of b squared minus 4ac. This is the discriminant. So what is our b? Our b is 6. So we're going to do 6 squared minus 4 times a times c. Well, in my calculator, I'm going to type is exactly that. So 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5 is equal to 16. So that's either a positive number, the number 0, or a negative number. So obviously that's a positive number. So I know that this is going to have 2 answers. So basically, this is one that we could have done in our heads. What 2 numbers multiply give us 5, that add to give us 6. So that would be x plus 5 and x plus 1, right? We wouldn't even need the quadratic equation, even though if we did the quadratic equation, it would give us x is equal to -1 and -5. Because remember, we set both, you set whatever's in parentheses equal to 0, and then you solve for 0. So if we had used the quadratic formula, we would have gotten these 2 answers straight away. But we know that there's 2 answers because when we did the discriminant, we got a positive answer. Now this one is going to be an example where we're going to end up getting a negative number for the discriminant. So on this one, we're going to do, what is b squared? Well, b squared, so we're going to do -4 squared minus 4 times 1, or a, times 5. So in my calculator, I'm doing 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5. And my calculator tells me my answer is -4. Well, that means under the radical, I would have a negative number. And we've already discussed that you can't have the square root of a negative number. It is a non-real number. Okay? And we don't have to do anything else. If it said, you know, what is the solution? We don't have to come up with any solution because the solution is a non-real number. And then finally, this tells us that we're going to end up only getting one solution, because isn't this x plus 3, x plus 3? It is. But let's pretend we don't know that. So let's do our b squared minus 4. Ooh, darn it. Okay, 4 times a times c. Well, this is going to be 36 minus 36, but let's pretend we don't know that. So 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 9. And yes, my calculator tells me the answer is 0, which means I'm going to have exactly one number. Okay, so this would end up being, this quadratic would end up being y plus 3 squared. So if I finish with a quadratic equation, I would find out that y is equal to -3, which is only one solution. All right, moving on. Okay, here we go. All right, so now we're on letter F, I think. Did I skip anything? Nope. All right, so let's see what we're going to get this time. So our A is 4, and on Hogs it asks you, I think, every problem to identify A, B, and C. And then it will ask you, after using the discriminant, how many solutions will you have? And if the answer is 2 or 1, then it's going to ask you what the solution is. But just like I suggested earlier, you just do what's under the discriminant first. It's a good thing to go ahead and do that first anyway, because if there's 0 answers, then you don't have to do the whole formula. So the opposite of B is -12 plus or minus 12 squared minus 4 times 4 times 9 all over 2 times 4. So I'm going to do the discriminant. So 12 squared minus 4 times 4 times 9, and I got 0. So there's only one answer, so then we have to find out what that answer is. Because so if this is 0, isn't the square root of 0, 0? And do we have to write -12 plus 0? No, because -12 plus 0 is just -12. So one of our answers, well, it's just one answer, excuse me. Our one answer is negative 12/8. Well, those are both divisible by 4, so our answer is negative 3/2. That's our one answer, negative 3/2. All right, on this one, our A is 1, our B is 1, and our C is 1. So we're going to do the opposite of B, so negative 1 plus or minus B squared. So 1 squared minus 4 times A times C, all over 2 times 1. All right, we're going to start with just our discriminant. So we're going to do 1 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1, and the answer is negative 3. So the discriminant is negative 3, which means our solution is non-real. Non-real solution. Okay. So this is kind of what Hawks looks like. It asks you to first identify your A, B, and C. So our A is 9, our B is 6, and our C is 1. And then the next question will be, how many solutions are there? And then if the answer is either 1 or 2, then it will ask you to identify the solutions. So we'll start with our discriminant. So we're going to do B squared minus 4 times A times C. So we're going to type in 6 squared minus 4 times 9 times 1. And I got 0. So this, how many solutions? If the discriminant is 0, how many solutions will we have? We'll have exactly 1 solution. And then, since we do have 1 solution, it'll ask us what that solution is. So we're going to do the opposite of B, opposite of 6, plus or minus, which basically that's 0, right? So basically it's just negative 6 over 2 times A, and 2 times 9 is 18. So our one solution is negative 6/18. Those are both divisible by 3. So our answer is negative 2/9. Negative 2/9. So remember, if your discriminant equals 0, you have exactly 1 answer. What happens if your discriminant is a positive number? That means you will have 2 answers. What if your discriminant is a negative number? That means it's a non-real solution. Why won't it erase? Here we go. All right, so you guys try these, and the answers are given to you on your paper, I believe. Oh, are there 7? Did I give you all 7? And then I don't think, no, you didn't have to do 6 and 7 because you didn't have to turn your answers into decimals. All right, so you guys try those. It even reminds you on number 4 that B is equal to 0 because there's no X to the first power. And it reminds you on number 5 that C is 0 because there is no constant in this equation. So make sure you use those 2 values for B and C. I'm not going to work these out. I think we've done plenty of examples, but if you don't understand one or if you want some clarification, you can always email me or text me and I will help you out.